8,850 meters, the mountain has stirred the imagination and courage of man for centuries. Hundreds have died trying to climb to its summit, and now a city slicker with a borrowed sleeping bag but a lot of heart is about to attempt to trek to its third base camp. This is the Everest Podcast.
This is episode 8 of the Everest Podcast. My name is Eric, and I'm your host for this podcast and for this entire Everest journey. So thanks for joining in. Kathmandu. We are finally in Kathmandu, and let me tell you, it feels great. Having landed in Kathmandu, as soon as my feet touched the ground, stepped off the airplane, touched the ground, it really felt like this trip was finally getting started. And I can't tell you just how happy I am that I'm actually now in Nepal and just on the brink of getting this whole trek to Everest started. So one little thing about the flight, it was a great flight, and part of the reason was as we were flying about 20 minutes before landing in Kathmandu, we flew by the Himalayas, and out the right side of the plane we could actually see Mount Everest just like rising above the clouds, and it was unbelievable. If any of you ever have the chance to fly in that area around the Himalayas, keep your eyes peeled, because you look out the window and all you see is clouds, but then all of a sudden at the horizon line you see just this massive hunk of rock reaching out from within the clouds, and it's Everest. And actually, when you look even more closely, you can see some of the other neighboring peaks around Everest as well, reaching out of the clouds. So Choyo was actually right next to Everest as well, and it was just amazing. Definitely very cool to see Everest through the plane, almost at eye level, thinking that's the mountain that I'm going to be hiking just in a few weeks or so. Clearly we're not going to the summit, but even then, going to base camp 3 halfway up that hunk of rock will be really cool, and seeing it out of the airplane window was just a pretty cool experience. But our adventure in Kathmandu really began just at the airport. A funny little story. We were met by our tour operator, Nima, who was there to greet us and to drive us to our hotel. So far everything's going without a hitch. He asks for our passports because we basically need to spend the rest of the day and night in Kathmandu so that we can get our Tibetan papers, our Tibet visa basically, from the Chinese government. And that takes a few hours. It seems like there's just this endless stream of paperwork that has to be done with the Chinese government, and it's just a headache. But the way he does it, it was a little unnerving. We were driving out of the airport, we were pulling onto the main road, and without even having the car stop, as we were driving and making a left turn out of the airport parking lot, Nima, our tour operator, takes our passports and sticks them out of the window as the car is moving, and some random guy on the street picks them up and then walks off with them. And Nima offers absolutely no explanation, so of course I have to ask, what just happened? As it turns out, the guy who took our passports works for Nima and is going to go handle the Tibet visas for us. But even then, even knowing that, it was still a little unnerving. It was the first time ever that I had to watch my passport being handed out of a moving vehicle to some random stranger while I was in a foreign country. Let me tell you, it's not a comfortable feeling. But the whole experience in Kathmandu so far, this whole day has been fantastic. Our hotel is the Summit Hotel. It was recommended to us by a friend, Joost, who I will be hopefully interviewing sometime when I return. Joost is actually a pretty hardcore mountaineering trekking guy and has connections to this hotel, so he was able to actually hook us up with a great rate. We're forever indebted because this hotel is just beautiful. It's on a hilltop overlooking Kathmandu, great staff, delicious food, no complaints, just a great way to start the trip. So anyway, just to sort of breeze along through some of the highlights of the day, we decided to be a little adventurous as soon as we checked in. We dumped our bags and decided to go for a little exploration. And I just personally believe the best way to discover a city is just to get lost in it. Take a map, put it in your pocket, and then just head in a direction and have some sort of a goal, some sort of big monument or a happening place in town, and head in that general direction, but walk it so that along the way you get to soak in the city and sort of see the city for what it really is outside of just the touristy areas. And that's what we did. We walked about 30, 40 minutes or so to one of the more popular places in Kathmandu called Patan Durbar Square, and had a great time there. A lot of just fantastic photos. People there are fantastic, very colorful. It's interesting that they have a lot of Indian influences. So most of the women that we came across were wearing Indian-style saris. A lot of them had bindi on their forehead. And even a lot of the foods that we find in the menus are in Hindi. So dal is lentils, and saag is vegetables. Roti is the flatbread. So very cool to actually see a lot of that. I'm familiar with a bunch of sort of Indian food items because I love Indian food. So it was cool to see that in the menus and be able to recognize some of that. The familiarity always helps. So the Durbar Square was fantastic. Got some great photos. Just spent pretty much the whole afternoon wandering around the square, exploring, and watching. Probably one of the highlights of the time was watching these small boys fly these homemade kites. It was pretty cool. That some of them actually got the kites extremely high, but when you watch these kids flying their kites, it was just priceless to see their expressions as they watched their kites climb higher and higher, and the smaller boys would just sort of sit and look on, and the look of wonderment or amazement on their faces was just priceless. And it was just a pretty great moment to just sit there and let it all soak in and be there in this really hustling and bustling area of town, and really feel Kathmandu for maybe it's still touristy, but for just a small piece of what their culture really is like. So that was pretty much our whole day, just wandering around the city, heading back, having a great dinner, and getting our whole trip off to a great start. So tomorrow we head out early morning for Tibet. We definitely didn't want to spend too much time at this week in Kathmandu because we will be back in about 3 weeks' time, and we'll have 2 full days to really explore and get to know Kathmandu. So for now, we definitely want to get in, get our visas, get out, and head on up to Everest, where I think the true adventure begins. We definitely have a long ways to go in terms of acclimatization. Our original itinerary was for us to start in Lhasa, which is already well over 12,000 feet, so a great place to start our acclimatization. But since we had to alter our travel plans thanks to the Chinese government, we are now starting in Kathmandu, which is only at just under 4,400 feet. Clearly not even close to Lhasa, and really no higher than some of the cities in the U.S. So being here and spending time here really isn't helping us in preparation for Everest and the high altitude. So we really want to get out of here as quickly as possible, get to a higher altitude city, and start really getting used to the thin air, which is what we're going to do tomorrow. So stay tuned. The adventure only gets more and more exciting as we proceed. There is one new segment of this podcast that I'd like to introduce before I sign off, and it's a segment that I like to sort of call Listen as Erick Gets Stupider. And basically, it's just this fun little thing where every day from now until I return from the Everest trek, I will repeat 2 or 3 tongue twisters. They're just basic little tongue twisters, nothing difficult. But the whole idea is just to see whether or not the altitude starts to really get to me in my speech. We're going to start today, which is Kathmandu, 4,385 feet, just to be exact. You should really hear no difference from how I would normally say this anywhere else. these tongue twisters, but hopefully, or unhopefully, depending on your perspective, if you're looking for entertainment value, then hopefully. If you're me, then unhopefully. You may start to hear my speech get a little garbled, a little slower, as the altitude gets a little higher. So we'll see what happens. There are three tongue twisters that I'm particularly fond of. So we'll stick with these, and we'll just repeat these every day and see what happens. So here's the first. I am a mother pheasant plucker. I pluck mother pheasants. I am the best mother pheasant plucker that ever plucked a mother pheasant. Now be careful when you repeat this one, if you do, because if you slip up, you might offend someone. So here we go. That's a little slower, but I'll sort of increase the speed a little bit. Repeat it 3 times, and we'll keep doing this as we go up and up Everest and see what happens. I am a mother pheasant plucker. I pluck mother pheasants. I am the best mother pheasant plucker that ever plucked a mother pheasant. I am a mother pheasant plucker that ever plucked mother pheasants. I am the best mother pheasant plucker that ever plucked a mother pheasant. I'll just repeat it twice, each tongue twister. That's a long one, so I'll do it twice. Second tongue twister. Stan Lepovsky's little sister is a syphilitic thistle sifter. Again, Stan Lepovsky's little sister is a syphilitic thistle sifter. That's a tricky one. You may want to try that on your own. But let's do that one twice as well. Stan Lepovsky's little sister is a syphilitic thistle sifter. Stan Lepovsky's little sister is a syphilitic thistle sifter. Alright, pretty straightforward. The last one is pretty short, so we'll do it 3 times. All it is blue glue gun, green glue gun. That's it. We'll do it 3 times. This one actually I trip on just normally, so we'll see what happens when the air gets a little thinner. Blue glue gun, green glue gun, blue glue gun, green glue gun, blue glue gun, green glue gun. There we go. I'm already screwing it up. But we'll see what happens. So that's a little fun segment that we'll do every podcast, and we'll see what happens. So that's it from now from Kathmandu. I'd like to sign off here and wish you all the best. Thanks for joining in. For more details on this podcast and my Everest journey, please do check out my website. Again, thanks for joining in, and stay tuned for the next episode of the Everest Podcast.
For more information on Erick's Everest trek, as well as photos from his trip, please visit his website at www.everestpodcast.com.